Hello. We're going to start now. So if we could have your attention. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Design Philadelphia Festival. This panel is about the Eastern State Penitentiary rebrand. So if that's not what you're here for, that's what you're gonna get anyway, right? Thank you all for coming. First question, how many of you, is this your first time at Eastern State? Anyone? Well, welcome, and we hope you come back for other events. This is a fascinating space with deep history and a lot going on, but thank you for coming for your first one. My name's Matthew Ray. I am a board member of Eastern State, and I'm also Chief Creative Officer of an agency called Chatterblast Media, so I have a little bit of an understanding about some of the things we're going to talk about today. But the real experts are to my left. Did I do that right? Notice I had to check for my callus on my right hand ever since third grade. These are our esteemed guests. I'm going to go down and have them say, oh, yeah, do that. That's great.
Fun. Yeah, we got this.
First is Tammy Mann. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
It's pretty easy.
It is pretty easy. And you're the creative leader at Finch Brands, correct? Yes. And you just moved to Philadelphia.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It took her 7 minutes to get from Manayunk here, right? That's like a...
Don't tell the police.
Give her that's unheard of in Philadelphia. Yeah. Thank you for being here today, Tammy. Yeah. And then next is Dr. Curry Sautner. And Curry, what do you do here at Eastern State?
This is so much fun. Hi, everybody. I'm the president and CEO here at Eastern State. I've been here for a little over 2 years. And thank you all for being here. This is going to be a really fun and engaging conversation. But also, thank you, Matt Ray, for doing this, because you're a perfect person to dive into this content, to dive into this design, and also to make it an enjoyable conversation. So thanks.
Oh, thank you. And then next is Nicole Frankhauser. Did I say that right?
Frankhauser.
Frankhauser. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie Young Frank. Do you ever see the movie Young Frankenstein? Frankenstein? Does anybody know that? It's a Mel Brooks. Sorry. And Nicole is our Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Yes? Say something about yourself, Nicole. What do you like to do in your spare time when you're not marketing or communicating?
I like all of the basic anxious girl hobbies, like gardening, yoga, cooking, reading.
I like all those too. Thank you, Nicole. And then finally, last but not least, is Lauren Collier. Did I say that right? Collier?
Sure.
Close?
Or Collier.
Collier?
Yeah.
Collier. Like there's a publishing, there was like a magazine, yes? Lauren Collier, not you. Oh, crap. And Lauren is the Chief Experience Officer at Finch Brands, correct?
Correct.
And what do you like to do when you're not chief experiencing?
You will find me walking my dog from one river to the next in Philadelphia.
That's good. Good. All right, so we have a really late agenda today. There will also be an opportunity for everybody to offer questions here in the room. So I think that there's something you can write down. Did everybody get a little thing to write down questions? Please feel free to write questions. There's no stupid questions. If there is one, we will tell you, but we will still try to answer it. You know, whenever you say that, you get it, right? You're like... but we will, hopefully we'll cover as much as we can here, and then we want questions from the entire room. This is all for you. Okay, I'm going to start off with Curry, and I kind of want to know how this, when did you say, ooh, I needed, like what was the genesis, and what was your ask of Nicole and our team from Finch? How did it start?
Sure. So I came on about a little over 2 years, like I said, 2 years ago. And at this point in time, there was a big shift going on in the institution. Sally, who had saved this site and does amazing work preserving this site, making it open to the public, and all of that work was retiring. And so I will just say a giant shout out to Sally. I hear lots and lots of horror stories from peers and colleagues around the country about taking over for a founding CEO. And I get to walk in with a beaming smile going, that was not my experience. I was so unbelievably lucky to have somebody that was there to support, that was there to mentor, to give information, is still there doing that, but also at the same time was ready to go take trips and go to France and all over the world and have fun. And such a real, true generosity of support and spirit. So coming in, I had ears wide open to the staff. I worked at the Constitution Center for 17 years. I was at the Franklin before that. My research in my doctorate program, my PhD, and my study was really looking at justice and fairness in America. So that I was entrenched in the history of that story in America and how it plays out in our legal system today. Through kids, through adults, through everyone. But coming here and thinking about what Eastern State could be was really fascinating. And what I found out very quickly from the team, Nicole being a huge part of it, was that they were already doing that work. That there was so much unbelievable good work going on in workforce development, in preservation, in engaging people in a site of trauma to build hope and resilience and change the criminal justice system. And so what I quickly learned is that the team had so many brilliant ideas that just needed to be put in the forefront. And what you ask yourself next is, what's holding you back? What is that? Sometimes it's alignment, but sometimes it's that baseline, and I usually never like to quote Brene Brown, but I'm gonna do it here. I feel like it's like very cliche, so I'm gonna do it anyway. What's that line that I've seen her talk about, like integrity is when your insides match your outsides. And what I was really, and it may be from somebody else she's quoting, but I'm gonna take it from her. What I found was that the insides of Eastern State were brilliant and were moving the needle on understanding the criminal justice system and moving change forward. And our insides and our outsides just needed to line up. And so, yes, I did look at that. And I think my general statement was, I thought we stopped using chiller font in the 80s and Crackle did not give any respect to what this place actually does, how it's leading the field in a unique preservation style and changing the game in that realm, how it's engaging, ensuring that people, when they come home, get to stay home. When we talk about reentry, when we talk about preservation trades, when we talk about justice education across this nation to ensure that we close the school to prison pipeline and don't create systems that put our kids in jail. All of this work was being done. All we needed to do is start matching up that inside and outside and focus it. And that's what a good brand does. So when I talked to Nicole about it, and gently going through this, people have poured their heart and soul into this place. You can't just come in and rip apart everything. You have to say, what is holding you back? Nicole was not at a loss for ideas and words. And I think your first statement is, it no longer serves us. It no longer serves us. We're ready to move forward. And I think that's really powerful. That's how you respect the past and move forward. So really quickly, it was the beginning of the steps. But what we needed to do was align the work and then start showing that we could do it, and then moving into working with an organization like Finch. And we interviewed, how many people did we? 4 firms to really get at somebody that wasn't just going to give us a look, but help understand our culture, help frame that identity, and be real true thought partners in this work moving forward through the process, but also after the process. And I think I will say, I know we all fought like family, but in like the healthiest way and like the loving way. And you have to do that. Change is not easy and it's really uncomfortable. But you do it together to move forward and you never lose sight of the goal. So I'm really grateful for the 3 people that are up here that really ensured that this work was possible.
Thank you. I want to turn to LC and kind of, now that we know what the setup is, and you can see up there what the setup is also. If what we know what the setup is, can you kind of give me like an idea of what the, how did the journey start, that led to this brand strategy? I was part of some of the efforts, and I know I only got to see like a fraction of the entire machine, but for everyone here, like I think we, as a public society, love to talk about branding these days, don't we? We all have opinions. Put that old man bat on Cracker Barrel kind of thing. You all know what I'm talking about, right? So everybody has a real distinct idea of the work that you're doing. And it can go, woo, south or be barely noticed. So when this opportunity came to you, start it off. Tell me what's happening.
Yeah, I want to echo, we understood the assignment very quickly, which was to elevate the external brand of who we are based on everything else, that's already, and activating the full potential based on who we already are. So it wasn't about remaking who we are, but it did, and I am going to use a few supporting slides just to show you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, because there is an important step that you have to take. You can't just jump to design. You do have to understand the strategy to get there, and there are steps to even get to the strategy. Strategy is also only as good as the activation. So strategy without activation is just words on a paper, and it's pointless. And again, we needed to make sure that everything was going to be thought through. So we took really a process that started from the internal. This is the output of the strategic plan that Curry and the board led with the entire organization, and we had the opportunity to be part of that, to understand the new mission and the new vision around being this historic site that envisions a criminal justice system that treats everyone with fairness and dignity, and that these inspiring a more just future, key words that start to come out that really set the foundation for who we are. So taking the strategic plan process, merging it with the brand that we're trying to build together, led us down a process that started with the internal voice. The best brands are built from the inside out. We wanted to do research with our board members, with our staff. We also wanted to learn from those who visit us and who love us most. Why do they love us? Because again, nothing was broken. We just needed to bottle what was happening to figure out how to take that and shout it from the rooftops, and then to also talk to people who are educators and from an engagement standpoint, who may not be the biggest advocates or most, yell from the rooftop visitors, to understand what's happening there. So our process was grounded in research, internal and external voices, which led to strategy, which then led to activation. There's a long list there, but it's really as simple as insight, strategy, design. So the research, I wanted to share a couple of the nuggets that really shaped what we're trying to do here, and answered some key questions. How can we leverage the power and legacy of our site to support our future vision for national impact? Let's no longer be one of Philadelphia's best kept secrets. Let's make sure we're big in Philadelphia, but even more so, let's get on the national stage. How do we balance our promise to deliver against education, tourism, and being a workforce change agent? One of the things we uncovered during our interviews is that sometimes these things were in conflict with each other, and the opportunity was no. These things should be working in synergy with each other and really amplifying our voice and amplifying the ultimate engagement we're able to deliver. How do we continue to drive visitor traffic locally and become the national thought leader for criminal justice reform? We have an amazing site here, but we also have education programs. What draws visitors in today? How were they impacted by their visit? What compels them to engage with us in the future? So when we think about that, this is just about, again, why are people coming? Is it more than Halloween? If they are coming for more than Halloween, why or why not, as we think through it? And then what is the future brand promise of Eastern State Penitentiary? This is intentional. So this question was really intentional, that guided us and then became a really important evolution moment as we got to the strategy part. There's a key word in here. Does anyone want to take a guess what the key word is that really ended up shaping our thinking a little differently? It's sort of a trick question, not really. Penitentiary. So penitentiary was actually a word that was something that was at the foundation of a lot of debate about who we are and how do we achieve all of this if we're a place, and how do we connect that. So this became a really important conversation. Again, internal conversations, external. We did an employee survey. It was a great moment to get a culture read with the new CEO. At Finch Brands, our purpose is to help brands win when it matters most. A matters most moment oftentimes is new leadership. And branding and culture are very much one and the same. If your people don't believe in your brand, guess what? Externally, it's not going to come to life. And so we had to really understand what was going on internally so that we could build that foundation as well. All right, so here's what we learned about the foundation about people's experiences visiting us. We learned Halloween. It's fun. We also learned it's where they held Al Capone. Here's one of the best things we learned. Nobody really knows who Eastern State Penitentiary is, where everything from the quirky uncle at a family party to the idealistic but somewhat flawed Don Quixote to the middle-aged, very specific, eccentric sociology professor who is angry the punk rockers next door are making noise. But we're also a hipster skateboarder, and we're also the jaded, edgy emo person. We are way too many things, and we needed to figure out what our voice was externally. So ultimately, we started to figure out that we really needed to go from eerie to thought-provoking, to go from these multiple personalities having a clear point of view. We needed to have this iconic and engaging experience and moment, and not just be a passive attraction. So ultimately, we came up with, and this is in a different look and feel, this is the stuff that never makes it to the external because it shouldn't, but this was the foundation. Very simple. The brand promise, the brand core idea here is simply dynamic connectors. Dynamic, it's energetic, it's active, it's creative, it's multifaceted, it's innovative. Dynamic is also about the ability to look forward, not backwards, and there's motion tied to it. Connectors, we're strategic, we're conveners. There's empathy in when you think about connection, and we're driven, we're educators, we're empowering. So being a connector, not just connection, there's an active approach to who that is and how that comes to life. So that became a very two simple words, standard strategic platform that everything else started to jump off of. And that really, this was about who we're articulating. But if you remember that key word, penitentiary, we realized, wait a second, our brand name has a potential challenge here to helping us live into being these dynamic connectors. And does our brand name, because the brand name is sometimes the elevator pitch for the creative, so we really needed to think about how do we meet our stakeholders who are visiting, and how do we meet our stakeholders who are looking for engagement and empowerment. So this became the new strategy. It looks really simple on paper. There was a lot of debate behind this, but the simple execution of dropping the word penitentiary from the master brand. And now you have a master brand and you have a big umbrella under Eastern State. And now you lean into it. How many of you walked up Fairmont Avenue today and you saw the sign and you saw Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site, America's first penitentiary? That's the place you're at. That's part of the larger Eastern State organization. And this is the place. Then there's the Eastern State Center for Justice Education. So two very distinct ways that we're able to meet the needs of our stakeholders, all connected to the umbrella of Eastern State. Now we're driving connection from place and education in one powerful brand story. I'm not going to read this, but there are different value propositions. Go to the website. You'll see how the value propositions come to life. And how you can see the sentiment of dynamic connectors comes through differently, whether you're place or from an education standpoint, and you'll see it in the design execution as well. All right, so now we got to America's first penitentiary, all grounded in strategy. We had to do something with it.
And that goes to Tammy.
Well, it's Tammy and the creative team at Finch. That's
And wait, are they here?
yeah.
Oh my gosh, hi. Well, thank you. Say hello to everybody.
Team.
Yes. And thank you. Tammy acknowledges that there's always people behind. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Yeah.
Yes. So at Finch, as Lauren was saying, it's insights, it's strategy, and then it's design. It's not a handoff. So we're a part of the whole part of the journey, understanding the dynamics of making sure the insides match the outsides and that big challenge, and really hearing a lot from all of the stakeholders. And that really helped a lot. And then we came on tours, we read all of the information and started to dig in. what should this look like? Like, where do we go? So I'll kind of show a little mess. This is a behind the scenes example of sort of where our heads started to go. You know, the first thing we did is looked at the space, because this place, the design of it resonates with penitentiary and penance. There was a reason for the architecture. There's a reason for the way it's laid out. And it immediately drew our attention. So we really stared at the floor plans and played around with it, tore it apart, but then thought, it can't be that obvious. We gotta go deeper. What else can it be? And then we were thinking about, you know, colors and shapes, and you know, how do they start to? Then there's this. Oh, it looks like a castle, and that's kind of neat. Maybe there should be something with the castle. And then there's this tunnels. You know, as you explore and you walk through, there's layers. So our heads were, you know, kind of spinning all over the place. And then in the end, we came right back to, but it is about the place. And then back to the penitentiary and what that is. It's about coming for penance. It's building in from the outside in, and it comes inward, and it creates this space of you know, where you should reflect. But when we're at the Center for Justice, well, we're going outward. We're bursting out. So the fun part was Brindy, our animating designer, helped create the motion graphics behind the logo too. That helps to express that very important difference. It's telling a story by really leaning into the architecture with the floor plan. And then color was a big one, because we didn't want to look like Halloween. We understood that. We wanted to feel alive and fresh. And then what should the whole palette become? So there was thought there. I came with a Pantone book and sat with Curry because color matters as much as everything matters. But it was, you know, the idea of the two colors coming together even form our primary color, making it something that felt alive and refreshing and inviting. Somewhat modern, but yet timeless, with typography that doesn't feel trendy and grounded. And then they have a whole lot of programs. How do we make all of these programs feel cohesive? Because they were all over the place. So we let color be the differentiator, and typography and the mark be the constant that sort of drives all of the different programs. And then from there, we started to play with, you know, the verbal. What do we want people to do? How do we start to express the experience with the message? So discover, discuss, share is one of the many taglines. And whenever we can, we try to incorporate that visual of the aerial view of the space, because it is such an important part, and it sparked our spark, which is another thing this logo does. It sparked our imagination. We created a brand guide like we do for everybody, because we want to make sure that our clients have all of the tools they need for success to work internally or with other agencies. We created sort of a look and feel toolkit of how does this start to activate out in the wild, as we like to call it. So, you know, I saw it at a bus stop, and I was driving, and I was like, I want to take a photo, but I couldn't pull over. So, you know, going through their photography, working with what they had, and then making sure that everything resonated with everything the strategy team had aligned on. Building out the website so that it really clearly tells you the story of the two different brands. So when you come to the site, you understand what you're looking at. You don't skip past and just want to come to see the Halloween hunt. You understand that Eastern State does a heck of a lot more than that. Creating social toolkits so that their internal team has all of the assets to stay consistent on their brand and their messaging. And this is an example of what the animation, you know, when I was talking about the brand, building from the outside in and the inside out, sort of, you know, how Brindy has to read my mind. God bless her. But the best part, and the thing that really gets me excited, is how it all came together, and in this video.
Bold experiment in justice, and a radical idea for its time. Eastern State started with a belief that a nation founded on liberty and freedom could remain true to those core ideals, and draw from these values in our treatment of those incarcerated. In 1829, the word penitentiary was a new invention, one that reflected a profound shift in purpose. to reimagine the criminal justice system in America. Many chapters have unfolded since those early days, yet the original aspiration to build a system rooted in fairness, dignity, and the possibility of a more just society remains our guiding light and continues to motivate our work today. Eastern State brings people of all backgrounds together, where they interact with two pathways of learning that are unified in purpose. On the grounds of Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site, our physical location roots us in Philadelphia's rich history, offering storytelling with the power of place. In parallel, our Center for Justice Education is a nationally recognized voice in criminal justice education, serving as a catalyst for workforce development and a connection point that provides opportunities for engagement, dialogue, and impact. Eastern State invites the nation to join us as we lead the way forward to deepen our collective understanding of the American justice system and shape a future that reflects the best of our ideals. Together, we are inspiring action for a more just future. Discover, discuss, share at Eastern State.
I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. I love the video. I'm going to turn the next question to Nicole, and I want you to tell our audience, after going through this brand experience, after reskinning everything, changing logos, all of that, what was the results for you, your team, and Eastern in general?
Yeah, I think something that's worth mentioning is that we didn't just flip a switch and turn the new brand on, that there was this really long runway leading up to it. So while Finch was doing all of this incredible work with the research and the design, we were also trying to, scaffold this with other supports. So Elsie mentioned a little bit in the beginning that we were also going through a strategic planning process at the time, and we wanted to make sure that these two things were aligned so that they were feeding off of each other, and that we would wind up with two things that complemented and worked in concert and weren't necessarily in conflict. And as that was happening, we were also redesigning our website. Our previous website launched in 2016. It was becoming outdated. It was a security risk. It didn't even have the functional capabilities to just be reskinned. So we hired a web developer, and we're working on all of the copy and make sure that the copy was aligned with the brand identity that we were developing with Finch. We also worked with a PR agency, so we retained Cashman to help us because, as many of you know, you really only get the opportunity to launch this brand one time. We wanted to make sure that we would capitalize on that experience and that we weren't letting this opportunity pass us by. So that was a lot of the work going into the rollout, getting the website up and ready, getting all of the PR support in place so that we would be ready to roll this out on a grand scale. And then eventually it was time, and this thing that we had been building for a year and a half was finally ready to sort of be birthed into the world. So we launched the website at the end of June. We sent out mass emails. We launched a paid and earned advertising campaign. So you see a little bit of the results behind me. That email that I mentioned, we sent it out to about 200,000 subscribers for Eastern State. We had a 40% open rate, which was really impressive, especially given that many of those people have only engaged with us through the Halloween event. You'll see increases in our social following and engagement. The media campaign had over 200 million impressions in media, and then many 100 million impressions more in paid. But I think beyond that, some of the results that I'm most proud of is the internal work. And Elsie mentioned that so much of this is about building the brand from the inside out. This was an opportunity for our staff where, like Curry mentioned, finally the outsides were matching the insides, and we had this thing that was more reflective of all of the work and the heart that they had put into this place. So it's been really fun seeing staff walk around with the hats. We have some in the back. Please take one on your way out. But they are carrying their tote bags, even if you see them on the weekend walking around downtown. It's like really fun to see. They're so proud to work here that they're like carrying their Eastern State totes. So that's been really wonderful. And then I think also beyond that, there are so many of these intangible things where you can see that the brand has made a real difference. Like Last week, I was in New York for a screening of a Ken Burns documentary about the history of crime and punishment in America. And I'm talking to all of these like really impressive justice funders in this similar landscape. And it was like really empowering to feel like we finally belong at that table, that I can hand them a business card that makes sense in that context and that doesn't look like the logo you saw in the beginning. And of course, there are all of the other fun things, like we finally have signage out front that doesn't look like it was printed in 1973. That's like really exciting for me. But I think so much of this is about us like really growing into who we've always wanted to be when we grew up, and having a brand identity that matches all of the hard work and incredible impact that this organization has achieved, and is planning for in the future.
I think from from my perspective as a board member, it has given me more tools in my communication school belt to talk to people about Eastern State. I think it's also given the people that I'm talking to more tools.
Can you say more about that?
No, I'm not on the panel. I think the brand has allowed people, my friends, to conceptualize that there is a physical location that is a site of conscience, that is a historic relic, is a center of preservation and workforce development, and also the country's #1 Halloween attraction. But this is also a place where there's deep work in restorative criminal justice being done, and talks about that. And it might look very simple on here for those of you who don't know, but it really wasn't simple. So, and not to bring up Cracker Barrel again, or you get a Cracker Barrel or a Jaguar, or, millions of the others. So, I can't express enough how incredible it was. And with that, I'm now going to, I think, turn it over.
Can I build on
Oh,
something?
yes.
Something I always say is that process is just as important as content. And I want to give Nicole and Carrie a huge kudos, because the only reason why we're able to be here with such a great product is because the process that they supported and cultivated, and the debate that they were open to. And we had to balance when to listen and when to lead, and they had to balance when to listen and when to lead. And we really did work on this together, but process with the support of the staff and the board as well, really being on board. And we also did something I left out, validation research with people who know and love us, and in the area, and also new visitors as well. And that also was a huge point, because again, we could think the creative's fantastic, but it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what's actually going to come to life. So being insights fueled and having people who are open to that extra testing really made sure that this activation could be huge. And I also want to reiterate, this was activated internally first, because process is just as important as content, because every single person needed to be a believer first and foremost. And so I want to give you both a huge kudos for being open to how this process unfolded.
I'm just gonna add one piece to that, and I just want to be fully transparent. If you're ever going through this process, just be honest. It's not pretty sometimes. It's extremely tense. I think comments like "I'm gonna flip the table" happened a lot in my office, because it is, but that's change. And that's when you push boundaries and you try to find alignment, even when people are having resistance to change. You still have to push forward. And it's knowing when, to your point, knowing when to hold and let it settle, and when to push forward. It's really difficult, but you end up with something really strong because of it. One of the #1 things I got huge pushback on is that we ran the strategic planning and the design at the same time, the rebrand. Oh my goodness, the amount of times I was asked, why are you doing those together? First of all, I don't think anything in my brain ever works linearly, so that's never gonna happen. But I'm unbelievably happy we did it this way, because I actually think you're doing it wrong if you're doing those two things and you try to do it as an A-B. It is not going to work. You have to run them in parallel. But that also meant at times we had to stop the branding work so we could move the strategic planning work forward. So it isn't smooth. It's a lot of touch and goes. It's a lot of go, stop, but you have to do that when you're working with people and you're working to implement real change. And I think that is also saying, so thank you for our support, but also back to you. We did a lot of go, start, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. So it was a lot of red light, green light going on with the team, but the team was in it for the long haul. It is a work and a partnership, and there was a lot of research behind this. As an evaluator myself, I find that unbelievably validating to know we were moving in the right direction, and also to ask secondary questions that we could get more information on. So really important to just know that you're in it for a ride on a hurricane, but stay on, just keep strapped in the whole time.
I think the metaphor that it's a birth is
Yeah.
the 100% the most true. That's truism. It really is. And with any type of creative process, birth process, there is ups and downs. There is mess. There may be a little. I mean, I only know the branding. I actually don't know a real birth process. But yeah, it's definitely a birth process. Does anybody else, before we turn it over to our, yeah, we like it here. Before we turn it over to the room, does anybody else have no? Oh, we got some questions. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. All right, good. With the renaming, I'm going to open this up to whoever. With the renaming, which stakeholders had the hardest time? Ooh, I think I know the answer to that question.
Okay.
It's okay. You're among friends. Broadcast live.
The thing is that internally and externally, people have been referring to this institution as Eastern State forever and ever since before I've been here. And so for me, it was actually a really easy transition. I think one of the most valuable takeaways from this whole branding process is the brand architecture. I think it helps so much justify how all of these disparate programs make sense under one umbrella. And so that's been really useful for me. I think in general, I was really surprised by how well all of this was received. As the communications person, I often receive all of the complaint emails, and so I was fully prepared to respond to a lot of those, but in fact, we got only one that said, "So what, you're woke now?" But aside from that, I got dozens and dozens of like glowing responses from people saying, "I've been a member here so long, I was really nervous about the rebrand and I didn't know how this was going to go, but it's actually phenomenal." And somebody who lives in the neighborhood saying, "I've been in the neighborhood, Eastern State is such an icon in Fairmount, and I was like a little bit scared that you were changing things up, but this is actually so amazing." So I would say in general, the feedback has been so overwhelmingly positive and received so well and so warmly. I feel really proud of that, and I think that it's a testament to all of the incredible work that Finch has done in guiding us through this process. With any change, there is resistance, and sometimes change is hard. And what I keep reminding myself and the rest of our team is that people feel so strongly about this because they care so deeply, and that's a really amazing place to be. Like, if we had put out, a subpar brand and nobody cared, that would be a problem. So in some ways, I'm kind of reassured that there are people who are still like a little bit resistant to it. I would say of all of the stakeholders, the trickiest has been the staff, and they are just like so deeply connected to this place, and I think that that's actually amazing. But getting people to understand, to like reshape their thinking about how this institution moves through the world is different. And I think that it will take some time and some adjustment, but ultimately, I think everybody understands that this is the way forward, that this is getting us to the future us. And I don't know.
The only thing that was great, and the only thing that I would add is we really did intentionality of including the staff in every single step of the process in appropriate ways. And we did a lot of cross-checking on that too. So coming up with ideas from the leadership team, and then coming up with framing the same questions and coming up with ideas from the staff at every single level, part-time Halloween staff, full-time staff that have been here for 20 years, people that were 6 months in, and then matching them up to see that they actually did match. That was a nerve-wracking evening for me when I realized I was doing a test from one group to the other. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night before I analyzed the data and saying, what if they don't match? And I was like, oh, if they don't match, I'm going to have a lot of trouble. And I was shocked at how much in alignment the ideas were. I think a part of the process is reminding people where their ideas are in the mix. So when they see something, when we do something, we have an event, when you remind people, hey, that was what you said in that meeting about 6 months ago, and you brought up this idea, that's where we went with it. And so you have to connect the dots for people because they don't always hear their good ideas in the work that they're seeing in front of them, but it came from their good ideas. And so I always joke like I have terrible source memory unless it's somebody else's idea, and then I remember exactly who it came from. And I want to give people that reflection back because it is an institution that we're building together. Our leadership team, including myself, we have a vision. We know where we're going, and we're going to move in that direction. And we want people to line up with it, but we want them to bring themselves and their ideas with it, so that makes a stronger vision moving forward. So it's creative, collaborative, but it's focused. And I think that really matters, but also connecting people back to their brilliant ideas. People have a lot of good ones around here in our community across the nation. We need to make sure that they see cultural institutions as a community resource that not only gives, but takes and then shows it back to them. So reflections of them in this work.
Thank you. We have a couple questions on the logo. How many logos were first pitched? And I'll parse that down to I think it probably means to the client, to the East, yeah. Because I'm sure the design team, the creative team here could say internally thousands, right? You probably had millions in your head and parse that down. But how many, tell us about the pitching of the logos to Dr. Curry.
Did I even put that one up there? I don't know. Well, no idea is a bad idea because they all get you to the idea, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, it's got to get messy. But one thing when we present brand, we don't just throw a logo out there because it's more than that. It's what does it look like? What does it feel like? What are we surrounding everything with? So we create territories. And so the first round, we presented 3. And what that looked like is here's a logo and here's how we would surround it. Because if it's really hard to just fall in love with a mark. It's just a mark. So we came with 3. And one of those 3 was close to where we landed, but not there. So then we came back with 3 more. We pushed the one that we now see as the final logo. But we also did some new stuff. Went back to the drawing board. We did the whole, what about the experience, the tunnel ways? What if we looked at it from that way? What if we looked at it from typographic standpoints? And then built territories around that and storytelling around that. The idea was to not just create the mark, but to create dimension. I think the second time around we came with really dimensional, and it was fun, but then Curry's like, it kind of reminds me of jewels or crystals. And I'm like, well, now that, yeah, and then once she said that, I'm like, well, now that you say that, I can't unsee it. Darn it, I really was excited about that one.
We used to the slide with all of that one. I loved it, like that crystal one, but I started with a science degree, so the amount of rock candy crystals I've grown in cups, and every time I looked at it, I loved it, but then I realized I loved it because I like to eat those things. I was like, okay, maybe this isn't right.
Yeah, and then we started really breaking it down into, well, what if we start to look at the many fragments and all the different parts, and then we started to get graphic and playing around, and then we got simplified. You can see that we did thinner lines, and what is the typography? What should it start to express? What if we start playing with the lines that play up, their traditional idea of the security gates, and it could become motion, because we always like to think of a brand in motion, since that's where brands should be going now. So a lot. This is just a example of the amount that we all played with and tore apart.
We were just joking that we haven't seen all of these, so this is really fun for us too, because we saw certain ones and we're picking and choosing yeah, but no, we're really happy with where it went. But do you want to add to that? Oh, I thought you had some.
No, just that I'm shocked to see a Target there.
Oh, yeah. I did not see that at all. So one of the things that I found really fascinating, because we went away from it and then back to it, is everybody loves the blueprint of this site. Like, they just fall for it. There's something about it that pulls people in, but we didn't want to be so in your face. We wound up with the logo being that. But if you go, I think it's the next one. Yeah, okay, back one. So if you look at it, that's the original design of the original cell blocks in 1822 to 1829 that were built. And it was very flat at first. And I was having so much trouble with it. And again, I'm not a designer. I have a biology and marine science undergrad. And so like, I'm not great. I'm like, this is where I can't find the words. And I will say, you kind of shop test this just like everybody did. And you talk to different people around it. And it was actually Matt that I was talking to. And I'm saying, having so many, like a hard time articulating what I like and what I don't like about it. And you got from me flat. I didn't like how flat it was, because this site is not flat. There's nothing about this place that feels flat. Not the textures, not the heights, nothing about it. We didn't want it in your face. We kind of wanted an Easter egg for people that don't know this site, as like, oh, it's the logo, it's the design of the site. And that's when it was both you and Liz, our head of preservation, said, what if you just put the roofs on? And that's where Tammy took that really physical concept and worked up the design to kind of hint to the roofs into those layers and give what Eastern State does. It teaches the layers of criminal justice in America. And this site is filled with so many layers that are primary sources of voices that never have a position of power, but the stories are trying to be told. So it really echoed back to the kind of heart of what we believe in when we talk about sites of conscience and telling the stories of the past and making sure we leave space for those who have not been recorded. So very powerful way that design captured a heart of who we are.
Thank you. Yes, it was a pleasure.
I have another question. This one probably will start with Nicole. Are you worried that the rebrand will have an impact on our Halloween fundraiser, or our true crime? Do you know what were you ever worried that this would? And I think the short answer is everyone was worried going into everything. But can you talk about that? Like when you were looking at this, like, where was your anxiety around that?
I worry about everything all the time, and that's just who I am. But actually, I think something that we talked about earlier is that Eastern State is so multidimensional, and people had such different ideas about who we are and what our identity is because of all of the different ways that they interfaced with the organization. And I think what the brand has really helped us do is present something that encompasses all of those things, but still has a clear point of view. So I'm not worried that any one audience will feel like their perception or thing that they love about Eastern State isn't reflective, because the whole idea is that it is reflective of all of these things, that it aligns them neatly. I think in some ways, the old brand was what was holding us back, and that this has actually just helped us grow in all of those areas, that it's helped us be additive, that we can retain all of the audiences who have come to know and love us for all of those things, like Halloween, like the daytime experience, like whatever program they were connected to, but also understand that there are all of these other ways that they can now engage, that maybe they didn't know that we had workforce development programs, or that we had a reentry program or a preservation trade center. Maybe they didn't know that they can join us online or in person to learn about different aspects of the criminal justice system, that they can still come and experience Halloween and have a great time. And also, hopefully they'll learn something while they're here. They'll understand that Eastern State isn't just that it is that, and it is also all of these other amazing things.
Thank you. I have a question for the Finch team. It is one of our audience questions. I'm going to slightly modify it. The question is, was the community involved in giving feedback in any way for the logos? I'd love to hear that, but also when you as professionals, as design creative professionals, are listening to feedback, living in a world where we don't need a lot more proof to know that sometimes the community feedback might not they might not understand, right? There's times for feedback and times not for feedback. How much of that feedback do you take of any given community? How much do you take it to heart? Because you had you had stakeholders who were the people who are in the work every day here. You have people who live around the neighborhood. Then you have board members, you know, who sometimes think they know things that they don't really know. So tell me about that community feedback loop.
Yeah, I'll start and then Tammy, you want to build? From a community feedback loop, number one, it takes the right kind of questions to figure out how to engage, as well as the right type of recruit and how to make sure that we're going through it. We had the luxury of using an amazing listserv. So we were able to recruit from the community within Eastern State. So people opted in to participate. So number one, they were engaged. We engaged them in a focus group style setting, and in the beginning and in the validation. So never did we say, "Do you like this?" You know, there's an art to the type of moderation. We are a research firm as well as a design firm, and so very intentional in how to structure the moderator guide and how to make sure we're getting to the psychology behind the questions. And so getting people to articulate what they love about Eastern State opportunities, but also getting them to talk about historic sites and other museums and other experiences, other cultural experiences, so that you start to have a balance. And then in the validation research, this was about warming them up and making sure they understood us. And then this is a little bit more of the subjective opportunity in terms of what does this spark. It's then our job to filter through the insights and figure out the breadcrumbs and figure out the narrative. We're not just replaying all the insights back. It's our job to take those insights, turn them into a narrative, and say, here's this insight that we heard about. This is where it's really going to go, and we felt really good about it. So a lot of that is our job to filter and listen through and to hear the different voices. And make sure that, if there's just a one-off or how do we connect the dots. And it goes back to connecting the dots all the way from our discovery process, which started with the leadership team. So all of these insights and all of these voices along the way collectively come together. So from a community standpoint, their voice is important, but not necessarily always the loudest. And it's our job to do so, to figure out, how to make something of it, and then how to replay and show our work and bring their voices along for the journey. So.
No, I was going to say, if one of you guys can add a little bit about who the community was.
Yeah. You want to do it?
Yeah. So in the beginning, in the discovery phase, we had a lot of conversations about who are the stakeholders here, and it was important that we had touch points where they could, collaborate or be involved in the process. And so Finch had several focus groups with tourism influencers in Philadelphia, with educators across the country who participated in our Collaboratory for Justice Education, with board members, with staff, with people who we call them like super users, like Eastern State super users, people who had very close connections to Eastern State through memberships, through repeat visitation, through donations, so that first of all, so that they could feel like they were part of the process. It was important, but also to the earlier question about protecting the audiences, we wanted to make sure that we weren't abandoning the things about Eastern State that people who are connected to us really loved.
And just to add that real quickly, we also brought in people that didn't know Eastern State. That was intentionally because if we're going to an audience that doesn't know us, then stop asking the people that know us too much. Because people sometimes don't see what's right in front of them because they know it too well. So we talked to educators around the country. We talked to leaders in the criminal justice field. We got a lot of conversations about not just what we want to be, but what we could be too. And that was really helpful to marry together appropriately. Sorry, you want to add anything?
I think you guys answered the question.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. What did the creative research look like when you did that? Did you audit other sites of conscious, historical sites?
Yes.
I remember there was conversations about Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about that.
So the creative team, like I said, we were involved in hearing all the interviews. So we're hearing from all of the stakeholders. And then we always look at what is everybody else doing, from other penitentiaries, but also other places that people go. So what is it that they're saying? Who are they trying to speak to, and how are they doing it in this day and age? Because we want to make sure that when you're out there, you feel relevant against all of the opportunities people have to go spend their time. If we're talking about people who want to go spend time somewhere, or people who want to invest in deep conversations. So we definitely did a lot of research, and that required more than just looking at logos. You know, it was spending time on the websites, even going to some of the places. I went to DC, walked around some museums. You know, I wanted to feel what it felt like. But I think our strategy team, when it comes down to how do we respond to feedback, I think it comes down to how do we present the work we do. I don't just go, here's a logo. Here's a logo and it kind of looks like Eastern State. There's a lot of storytelling behind each logo, and hopefully the storytelling connects back to everything we heard. So we're trying to answer to what we already heard and play it back to you. So we heard you, and this is where we came, and this is how we came. And that really helped. Feedback was just make it more dimensional.
You also have dived down a deep rabbit hole in the content. And I know that because they send us articles all the time on like, this happened, and did you hear about this, you know, this incarcerated site and what's going on? Did you hear about this new court case? Did you hear about this workforce development initiative in Idaho? I mean, you guys have dove into the content, and not just historical content, in modern criminal justice and the justice system conversations. Yeah. And it really, and I was really impressed with that. Your entire team did that, and didn't just say we're in here for this like a ride on the first level or the second level. We went down deep on that. Right. And I appreciate that, because that's being a true thought partner.
Yeah, I mean, I still come to your stuff.
Yeah, and you still send me great articles. Appreciate it.
It was powerful.
I would assume to some level it's probably changed the entire creative team's algorithm a little bit, right? Like now we know how the media of the world works. You're probably being served more historical sites and criminal justice issues and workforce development than you had before.
I mean, your phone is listening right now.
Yeah, everyone's phone's listening right now. Yeah. I have one more question. I want to be cognizant of time, and I'm sure people have things to go to. I have one more question here that I'm going to ask. And I think I'd like to ask this of everybody, and I'm going to broaden it a little bit. It's a great question. I'm going to just broaden it. During this process, A++ for the task at hand. But what else did you learn beyond the task at hand? You know, from the Finch team, from and from the Eastern State team. What else did you learn about Eastern State, about our mission? Do you know what I mean? About the branding process, or our audiences, or our communities, or our stakeholders? What else did this very rich, very deeply thought out process reveal to you about everything? I'm going to start with Lauren. Since you're the furthest away, you can't hit me.
All right. I mean, I think at its simplest form, I'm from Philadelphia, and I had only been to Eastern State once before I met Curry and Nicole, and it happened to be like the October before we met, just total random. So I think the most important thing I learned is just how amazing this place is and how lucky we are to have this historic site in Philadelphia. We talked a lot about Philadelphia is the city of first. Well, how is it that this didn't become part of the everyday narrative within that? And so really getting credit as an amazing opportunity, an amazing story to tell within Philadelphia. And then just the depth of the impact that this organization has for all the right reasons. A lot of debate that was had during, I had the privilege of being part of some of the early strategic plan conversations, because it was important for us to hear the strategy of strategic plan. Where are we going? Where do we want the brand to go? And this debate about our role as educators and conversationalists versus impact. And I think, really understanding the passion of our staff and where they want to take it versus how we have to bring the public along for the ride, and how we have to build a brand that earns us the right to spark conversations, yet toe a fine line in terms of what we stand for. So I think that's been just really fascinating. And from a brand standpoint, this was politically charged. And I think, if I know some of you are here from nonprofit, we always talk about this. Nonprofits have boards and how you get the right people involved and, how you think through it. And so from a process standpoint, something we believe strongly at Finch is that we track hours, we don't bill for hours because we need our people to do what they need to do to have the right conversations to make sure that strategy and design are truly activated. And I think the stops and starts were the perfect, we needed to have the patience to be part of the journey with the team, and that was okay with us from the get-go. So the patience to be in it for the long haul, despite maybe the billables matching up to the effort sometimes.
Thank you for your donation. On the surface, I think what I learned is all of the ins and outs of a rebranding process. I have worked at Eastern State for 17 years. I inherited the legacy brand and have been kind of like chomping at the bit to do this process. So I am so grateful to have the support of Curry and Finch in doing this, and just seeing like soup to nuts how this whole thing works has been really educational and eye-opening and informative for me. So I loved sort of like getting to see how the sausage was made. I think on a deeper level, and this is like a little woo-woo, but I do think that this process helped me trust myself a little bit more. There were just like so many points along the way where you're getting like completely conflicting feedback and information, and a lot of this can be subjective, and you really have to, I think, like trust your gut sometimes and know when you just need to make an executive decision that's best for the future of the institution and keep moving on. So that's been really helpful for me in my career.
Because you're brilliant, so. I think the process, I love the process, even though it was like a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of energy, but a consensus building. And I feel like that is like the stage of my life I'm learning all about consensus building, which I feel like the rest of the country needs to work on that too. But it really is about, like, that's when I like to move forward. I see things, I know where we're going, and I want to go. And sometimes that means being patient and waiting. I kept thinking that line from Dr. Seuss, the waiting place is the most horrible place there is. It's in one of the books. I think it's The Places You Will Go. And it is so true, but sometimes time really does help consensus, because people need to process through things, and you need to give people time for that. So what I learned was moving through this process was great to do it all together. We did new strategic plan, full alignment of the team, new brand, and a new website, and a new PR firm, all within 18 months? 18 months. It's a lot. And that is a lot to go through, but really building consensus and knowing when to wait was probably the biggest learning curve I had there. The biggest aha moment that I am so grateful for in that time was this process as the new CEO gave me the opportunity to see such brilliant leadership here in my team that wasn't always given the opportunity to lead. And I could see the brilliance in all of these process steps. People shined, and they stepped up, and they owned their own area, they moved it forward, and they spoke with conviction. So as a leader, I got to see how smart they all were, how brilliant they all were, what supports that they needed, and how they started working together. Because it's not about me, it's about them working as a really tight team. And so that's the grateful that I have, is without this process, it would have just taken me longer to see all this greatness. But with this process, it let people move forward that hadn't had the opportunity to move forward before. So very grateful for the experience. Love that it was backed by research, because that really does help you test and see which lines are hot and they're working and which lines are not. But also gives you an opportunity to think through, okay, I need to take my time. Even though I want to move faster, even though I know we're going to get to the outcome that I know we're going to get to, it's about letting people get there on their own time, and that matters. So that's what I've learned, and that's what I picked up along the way.
Huh. So I don't know how many people in here are creatives, but I'd say the best part about our jobs is we learn. So every client we get, we have to know you. We have to really, really know you, because we have to tell your story. And I think I've done a lot of it. I've been doing this for a while. And I don't think any of them have ever touched me. It's like this. I mean, group hug.
I know.
No, I reach out because I'm curious. I continue to go, wow. Like I was on an airplane and there's a documentary and it was, guys incarcerated and they were creating a theater and it was based on a true story. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, you got to see this. It was beautiful. But I mean, you start to, the more you know about things, the more you care. And I should go back to everything in the world. I wish we all took time to ask these questions, but this place, yeah, I want to keep coming to hear and grow and learn. And so you're doing a good job.
Thanks.
Oh, wait, you have one.
I want to thank everyone on our panel. If everybody could give a hand to these 4 experts. I want to thank all of you for attending this event. Thank you for coming for Eastern State. Please come back. Please come back to other Design Philly events and experiences. Check out their website to find out more. Check out our beautiful new website with this beautiful new brand to check out more of the great things that happen here at Eastern State. Please come up and say hello. No autographs, please, of our team. But please come up and say hello. And thank you all very much for coming out, and have a great day.